Daniel Sports Central, we go over 2022 college football predictions for the BYU Cougars, team that went 10-3 overall in the 2021 season. Overall, great season for BYU, but how this team be in 2022? That's what we go over here today. We'll be analyzing this team and predict their schedule game by game in this video, starting out with your team trends. BYU 10-3 last season. They were 5-1 in their first 6 games, 5-2 in their last 7. And overall, it was a great season for this team. And considering, this team, the past 2 seasons, they've really had, consistent success here. In 2020, don't forget this team was 11-1 in the 2020 season. They were a huge surprise team, and 10-3 in 2021. This team is definitely heading in the right direction as we head into the 2022 season here. Their schedule was actually pretty difficult last season. They played some good football teams in 2021. They played Utah. It turns out they were the Pac-12 champion. Made it to the Rose Bowl, beat them 26-17. They beat Utah. They were one of the only teams to beat Utah last season. They beat Arizona State, top 20 team at the time, 27-17. Lost to Baylor on the road there in mid-October, 24-38. Beat Virginia 66-49. That was a shootout. They beat USC on the road 35-31, and lost to UAB in the Independence Bowl 28-31. And for this team to go 10-2 in the regular season, I feel like they kind of, their options were kind of limited. They were close to being at large or eligible to be in a New Year's Six bowl game, but they just weren't. They weren't quite good enough. 10-2, you're kind of knocking on the door if you're a team outside of the Power 5 for an at-large bid, but unfortunately, it didn't quite work out for BYU. So they got put in a bowl game against a team that I feel like was significantly worse than them. UAB wasn't on the same level that BYU was last season, but I feel like this team, they just mentally, I don't think we're in that game very much, and they took the loss there 20-31. But in the end, I still feel like BYU, based on the resume and this team, they were much better than UAB in the end. But they're close, and I'm sure the goal for this team is to make it into a New Year's Six game in 2022, or even be a dark horse national contender. This team, looking at the talent going into next season now, Jaren Hall's coming back. He was a huge impact player for this team last year. This team could be a dark horse national contender in 2022. Sounds crazy, but I feel like this team definitely has got the talent to get some big wins and potentially make a run at it. Jaren Hall, of course, last year, 2,500 yards, 20 touchdowns, 5 picks, in a 64% completion rate. His stats were overall very good last season, and looking forward to seeing how he does here going into 2022. And of course, the main loss that I'm concerned about is Tyler Algier, who put up 1,800 yards last season, 23 touchdowns. He was a huge impact player in the backfield there. So losing him is going to be tough. That is the one main concern that I see with this team going to next season. Otherwise, I like the depth in the skill players positions. Gunnar Romney's coming back along with Puka Nacua. So you got your top 2 wideouts coming back for next season. Both players were key players for this offense last year. Nacua put up over 950 yards, 6 touchdowns, and Gunnar Romney last season put up nearly 600. You do lose your 3rd and 5th wideouts, but you do return your 4th there in Keanu Hill. Last season, Hill put up over 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. So the receiving core looks very good. Some good depth in there going into next season. You do lose one on the offensive line. Defensively, though, this team looks great going into next season. The defensive side of the ball should only improve. They're hardly losing anything on there, so hardly losing anyone. So BYU, this team looks really good across the board here. I feel like this team is, they've got excellent returning production, and honestly, it brings up the question, is this team a dark horse national contender in 2022? That is a valid question for this team going to next season, whether or not they're potentially a dark horse national contender. Could they make a run at the college football playoff? I honestly think so. I feel like the schedule, it's not an easy schedule, but that's what you want if you want to be making a run for the college football playoff. And if any season I feel like is going to be BYU's season to make it, this could certainly be the one here. Jaren Hall coming back. The one loss I'm concerned about is Tyler Algier, which, he's obviously going to be a huge loss, but the receiving core looks good, offensive line looks good, defensively they look great. Things look really good for BYU going to next season. I feel like this is a team that people should not be sleeping on going into next season, especially if Jaren Hall is able to improve, as I definitely expect him to. I think he's a quarterback that, should not be slept on going to next season. So, transfer portal and recruiting, nothing too crazy for this team in the transfer portal. Caleb Christensen is leaving, defensive back. Baylor Romney, quarterback. And then you got Cade Parrish, who took off to Utah State. But you bring in running back Houston Himuli from Stanford, which is going to be he could potentially be an impact player coming in, adding some depth to the backfield. An offensive tackle you got coming in from Oregon, and Victor Ibaka, offensive lineman, is in the transfer portal. Recruiting wise, 56th in the nation. You got 2 4-stars and 23 stars coming in. So that said, let's look at your schedule now going to next season. You got South Florida on the road in week 1, which is definitely a very winnable matchup there, but going on the road in week 1, you want to make sure you take care of that one. I mean, South Florida is not a very good football team, but going on the road in week 1 isn't always the easiest thing to do. And then you got Baylor coming to town. That's definitely an interesting matchup. Baylor next season is expected to once again be a big Big 12 contender. Personally, I don't think Baylor's going to be quite as good as what many people are saying, but I mean, that certainly shouldn't be an easy game there. And then you got Oregon on the road after that. Wyoming coming to town to finish out, or your second last game in September, because you play on a Friday night there against Utah State to finish out September. And then you got Notre Dame in a neutral location after that. That'll be a huge one there. You got Arkansas coming to town. Interesting matchup there. Then Liberty on the road. You got East Carolina coming to town. Boise State on the road. Dixie State at home. And then Stanford on the road to finish out your season. So looking at September here, you got South Florida on the road. I'm going to put that as an easy win. Certainly, I'm kind of leaning on putting that in yellow, but I feel like, I mean, South Florida is a team that you should take care of pretty easily. They're not a very good football team, but my main concern there is going on the road in week 1. Sometimes that can trip up some football teams, and so you want to make sure you take care of South Florida in week 1, or else that could set a bad tone for the season. And I mean, that can definitely make this team's record much worse than it could be, setting the tone in a bad way there. But playing Baylor, then I feel like you beat Baylor. You got them coming to town. It'll be a closer game, but I feel like once again Baylor next season, I don't think they'll be quite as good as they were, say, in 2021. And then Oregon on the road, I'm going to favor the Ducks there in what is pretty much a coin toss. I mean, that is a very close, good matchup there. I feel like Oregon, though, in the end, pulls that one out. I mean, they got the game at home, and in the end, I feel like the Ducks are going to be a pretty good team next season. But certainly, it's a very winnable matchup, and you could easily win that one as well. Then you got Wyoming and Utah State, both easy wins in my opinion. So you're 4-1 heading into October. You got Notre Dame, which is a huge matchup, especially if you're undefeated. If you're 5-0 going into that Notre Dame matchup, that is going to be a massive game there, because that's probably going to be the game that determines whether or not you're still going to be eligible for the college football playoff. And we saw how it was with Cincinnati last season, how crucial that Notre Dame game was last season. And so you want to win that one, but in the end, I'm going to favor Notre Dame. I feel like the Irish are I'm just more confident picking them in that matchup there. Arkansas at home. I picked in my Arkansas team predictions, I picked the Razorbacks to win that game, but I'm actually going to be switching that. I'm going to be picking BYU actually in that matchup to get the win. Just based on looking over this team again, I really think BYU is a team that could once again, this team should once again be, I feel like, a contender, and definitely a team that people are sleeping on. So I think you beat Arkansas there, which would be a huge win against a good SEC opponent. And then you got Liberty on the road, close one, but you beat Liberty, and then an easy win over East Carolina. So you're 7-2 heading to November, which 7-2, I feel like, I mean, if you got a 7-2 record heading to the last month of action, I'd say you're in pretty good shape, and you win those last 3. Pretty confident in that. You beat Boise State in a closer one, beat Dixie State, and then Stanford, beat them by a touchdown or 2, and you're 10-2 to finish out the season, which I feel like, I mean, once again, I mean, if you flip that Oregon game, you're 11-1, and I feel like that Notre Dame game, in the end, you do lose that one, but certainly, I mean, the potential is here. I mean, we looked over the returning production and everything. I really think, I mean, I'm not going to go so far as to say this team will be in the college football playoff, but I definitely feel like this team is being slept on by a lot of people going to next season. Could they be a dark horse playoff contender? Very much so. This could be the big surprise team of the season, and they can make a run for it. And honestly, that's it sounds crazy, but that's a possibility. This team, and I mean, it's a difficult schedule, which is exactly what you want if you want to be in the college football playoff, if you're BYU in this situation, because even if they were 11-1 maybe, I mean, they don't play a conference championships. That does actually really deplete their chances of being in the college football playoff as an 11-1 team. But I mean, if they were in a conference, which they're going to be in the Big 12 here in the next couple of years, that I feel like is actually going to be a really good thing for BYU. And I mean, the Cougars have proven the past couple of seasons this team is going to be competitive once they get into the Big 12. I mean, Oklahoma and Texas are taking off in that conference, and I mean, BYU could definitely be the next team to step up and win a couple of conference championships, and looking forward to seeing the future of this team as they're definitely heading in the right direction going into 2022. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below on BYU, and I appreciate you guys watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.